Overall, I mean, what a week to be a Northwestern Wildcat.
Welcome to Center Cup. I'm Kyle Muserino here as always with Will Neary and Nick Newmeyer, and we've got a recap Monday today. Another great weekend of golf. We'll recap another exciting finish at the Valspar Championship, and then we will take a quick trip around the globe, touching on Bryson's win in South Africa, Jordan Gumberg's win in China on the DP World Tour, Hyoju Kim's win at the Fortinet Founders Championship on the LPGA Tour. But we will start with our fellow Wildcat, Matt Fitzpatrick's win at Copperhead in what turned into a great tournament. Nick, you are decked out in some awesome Northwestern gear with a
Aren't we
great
all?
Cubs Northwestern cap. What'd you think as we had Matt Fitzpatrick dueling it out with fellow Wildcat David Lipsky in Copperhead?
I think Matt Fitzpatrick has been one of the better golfers in the world over the past like 3, 4 months. And I think if it's not too early to say, I think I might be locking in my Masters pick right now with him.
Wow.
But
It's too early to say, but wow.
he's definitely been a great golfer, someone that we saw him last week at the Players, just absolutely heartbreaking result. And to see him come back immediately after, I think I read he was the first player to win on tour immediately after a runner-up finish since I believe 2011. But overall, just a great week for Fitz, and even better for David Lipsky. I know we'll get into both of them shortly, but just overall, very very happy for Fitz. Even happier for Lipsky. Great result for him. So just kind of recapping what happened. Obviously, we had Matt Fitzpatrick as the winner. Played the weekend bogey free, which at a course like that with the snake pit, like the really really hard finishing stretch, not easy to do. That's really really impressive. Just overall really consistent golf. Nothing too crazy. I feel like Sunday was kind of just a weird day where nobody really ran away with it. I mean, obviously you had Sunjay M back in contention for the first time in a few years, but kind of threw his lead away. We'll get into that shortly, but Fitz, obviously drove the ball really well at TPC Sawgrass. It was the same story for him again. Just overall, very consistent play. Led the field in strokes gained. Obviously, that makes sense with him winning. And I think both him and Lipsky, what I was kind of seeing on Sunday was that both of them, I feel like they're missing a lot of putts I think they each had a lot of putts to take the lead, and they just missed a bunch of them. I feel like nobody really ran away with the tournament, even though a lot of them probably had a chance to do so. But I really want to give my flowers to David Lipsky here. He's someone that, if you've been paying attention to us from the beginning, he's someone that I highlighted in our very first episode as someone that, impressed me towards the end of last season and someone that I was keeping my eye on for a little bit. So just kind of going through his career, he was a Big Ten champion at Northwestern. Played very well. I think he was a NCAA individual runner-up as well during his time at Northwestern. Turned pro in 2011 and has three worldwide wins to his name at the Alfred Dunhill Championship in 2018, the Omega European Masters in 2014, and the Handefaldo Cambodian Classic in 2012. Um, he fired he fired a 65 in his second round to put himself very much in contention. Just excuse me, establishing himself as someone in contention for the weekend, matching 70s over the weekend. I'd say the putter kind of let him down a little bit in his final round. Just looking at the strokes gained, he was he's fourth, or no, excuse me, eighth in the field in strokes gained putting with nearly 5 strokes. Was in so he was eighth in his first round, sixth in his second round, 33rd in his third round, and then 59th, lost over a stroke putting on the greens in his final round. Maybe that's probably what caused him to, not take the lead. But at the same time, it's his highest finish since the 2025 3M, where he placed in third, and it ties his highest career finish at the where he took runner up at the 2024 Pro Tour Championship. and it rose him all the way from 154th to 88th in the OWGR. So overall, just a really good result for him, and I'm really excited to see if he can keep up the momentum to the rest of the season.
Yeah, it was really fun to like, watch the back and forth between him and Fitzpatrick on Sunday, like you said. I think it was a weird tournament to watch for me. I feel like especially on Sunday, like you said, because nobody really did anything particularly cool. Like nobody, Fitz obviously was incredibly impressive to go bogey free over the weekend. Like you mentioned, Nick, like at a course like this, that is, I don't know if he was the only player in the field to do that. I'd be fairly surprised if he wasn't the only player in the field to do that. I know he was the only player in the field in the 70s over all four rounds. Um, or sorry, less than 70 in all four rounds and the 60s in all four rounds. So that was really, really impressive. But kind of like you said, it was a weird, exciting, but incredibly unexciting Sunday. Like it was it was tight the whole way. Sungjae, like you said, I think he came in with what, a two-shot lead over, was it two shots or one shot going into Sunday? Yeah, he
Yeah, it
was
was
two
two
shots
two.
up going into Sunday over Lipsky, and I guess it was Brant Snedeker actually that he was holding a two-shot lead over. But both Sungjae and Brant Snedeker pretty much fired themselves out of contention very, very quickly. Sungjae, he has not had a great year at all coming into this, and was five over through 10, and a couple of those bogeys came really, really early, and it was very, very clear that he did not have what was needed to win on Sunday. So it was tight the whole way. I think at one point there was like five guys tied at 9 under for the lead. Other than Fitz, guys were making bogeys. Birdies were very hard to come by, but at the same time, it didn't quite feel as dramatic as I think it was for some reason. And some of that is just, like we were saying, it's a really, really hard course, and the course kind of shined through to me over the weekend. I mean, it was like fast and hard, and you could not hold greens unless you're hitting a wedge. Like anything that was out of the rough was if you were out of the rough and carried it onto the green, you were not holding the green in most cases, especially from any long distance. But to get back to David Lipsky, like you said, I mean, it's been a journey, right? Like this is, you mentioned he turned pro in 2011. We are 15 years removed from that. I know on Sunday they were talking about how he must be saying to himself, like, man, what do I have to do to win one of these things on the PGA Tour? And hopefully he can. He's obviously playing pretty good golf. I think, like you said, the 88th in OWGR is his highest ranking of all time. And it was obviously really fun for us, two Wildcat alums, and we're going to claim Matt Fitzpatrick despite his one quarter on campus at Northwestern. We're going to claim him. So it was fun to see. Once it was cemented, on the back, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 holes, like where it was really a Matt Fitzpatrick versus David Lipsky show, and it wasn't. It was pretty clear that nobody else was going to step up. For a second, I thought Marco Penge was going to step up and make a couple birdies down the stretch, just because of the firepower he has. But at the end of the day, it was really between those two guys, and as much as it was somewhat boring, it was also dramatic. So I think another week that we've talked about a lot, how these in between weeks, like what we've seen. When Nico Echeverria and Shane Lowry squared off and stuff at the Corrales. You get the drama in these in between weeks, and it kind of makes up for the fact that you're not seeing crazy, crazy names. Although the field here was fairly strong, and obviously you get what's Matt Fitzpatrick, like probably sixth or 5, 6 in OWGR now, probably was eighth coming into this, something like that. So obviously
Yeah.
big names winning. But yeah, it was an interesting Sunday for me. To get back to what I was trying to say, is that it was fun, it was dramatic, but it also was somewhat unexciting. But great to see Matt Fitzpatrick and David Lipsky up there for sure.
Yeah, and I think just looking at just sort of the comparison between the two weekends, it was really on the 18th hole where Fitz sort of took the lead. He had that, I think it was like a 14-foot birdie putt, that epic fist pump to secure the victory. You could tell he was really aggravated. I know he talked about this earlier in the round or at his press conference. I'm sorry. I think he was playing with Adrian Dumont de Chassart. I
Yeah.
don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but and he was just playing slow, like
Hmm.
really slow, to the point where Fitz actually went and basically snitched on to the rules official, and he was able to get an official warning. But you could just tell in his body language that it was really affecting him, was really starting to piss him off, and then basically, to have that epic birdie putt on 18, which ultimately sealed the deal. similar length to the putt he missed on at DPC Sawgrass. So it's just full full circle redemption for him. And then one more player I want to give my props to. Dylan Wu, another Northwestern grad, tied for 26th. It's his best result of the season as well. So overall, I mean, what a week to be a Northwestern Wildcat. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. The pace of play was like maybe the most intriguing thing on Sunday, kind of mid round of the day. You kind of saw that popping up in the middle of the round, and they were talking about it on the broadcast. And Dumont did get like an official warning from the rules official there, and then Fitz obviously after. I'm sure he was already pissed off after the round, and he won. Imagine if he didn't win, what the conversation would have been like. But I want to ask you guys, so early Sunday, Xander comes out absolutely scalding hot. He shoots 6 under, gets to 8. So he started 2 and then finishes at 8, which ended up being right around the winner. So you kind of thought, okay, maybe there will be some scoring today. And then it just didn't happen. What do you guys attribute to that?
I mean, I think honestly, as much as I will, tout David Lipsky and some of the other guys, a lot of the people at the top are not guys that you would go into that round expecting to go low, to be honest. I mean, David Lipsky, like Nick mentioned, had that 65 on Friday to really to carry his tournament and get him into the mix there. Outside of that, a 2 under, a 1 under, and a wonder, very respectable scores at a course like this, but not, lighting it up. Like we said, you had Sung J M near the top. He shot a 74. You had Brant Snedeker, 45-year-old Brant Snedeker, randomly up there. Throughout the first 3 rounds of the tournament, he was up there, but then shot himself out of it with a 76 on Sunday. There wasn't really like Matt Fitzpatrick, frankly, was the only person in that like chasing pack who was somebody you could see making a like significant move. I mean, other guys that you could see. Like I mentioned Marco Penge, who I really like, but at the same time, guys like Marco Penge who have the ability to make a lot of birdies, that's great. But it also he's open to a lot of variability on a course like this, right? Like the guys who are really, really strong and can go on those birdie runs like a Marco Penge are also susceptible to kind of struggling to find par here and there. So on a course like this, it's tough for guys like that to really piece together a 7 under or a 6 under or a 5 under even without something really significant happening or like having a really, really good stretch of holes, managing to get up and down from everywhere. Um, but broadly, I think that's kind of what led to the fact that I mean, this is 65 that Xander had. I believe there was what, like 265 or 365s on Sunday, but that was the best round of the weekend, I think. Yeah, 65 was the lowest score on Sunday. 67 was the lowest score on Saturday, which is kind of crazy for a PGA Tour event. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it really was a lot of it was just who was up there at the top. I mean, you didn't have a lot of names up there that are like strong, consistent golfers. You had either, golfers that like, not to hate on Sungjae or Brant Snedeker, but golfers that you wouldn't expect to be up there in the first place. And then
Sure.
a lot of golfers that have a lot of high variability in their play.
yeah, I think as well, I think what I read yesterday, and it really was a great take. I forget who said it, but it reminded me a lot of, and this is almost a perfect segue to another golfer that I want to highlight. It almost reminded me of sort of the flip side of the 2022 RBC Heritage, where basically nobody wanted to take the lead that day, and there's everybody just kind of like stagnating at the top. And then all of a sudden, Jordan Spieth comes back from like six back and just goes low on the day and takes the lead. And that's what didn't happen here. It seemed like there was every opportunity for someone else lower on the leaderboard to sort of just come and take the tournament away from a bunch of people that just did not want to take it. And that never really happened. So overall, just a very interesting tournament result.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at for this the I'm reading through the leaderboard after round three. You have Sung Jae in first, 2 shots up. David Lipsky and Brant Snedeker. We talked about Matt Fitzpatrick and Marco Penge were T4, and then you have S.H. Kim, uh, Adrian Dumont de Chassart at five back, along with Corey Connors, Tom Kim, Chandler Blanchett at six back. Like there just weren't guys like up there that you're going to have go real low and make a significant challenge at that other than Matt Fitzpatrick. And really, he did it by being consistent, not by going low, like Nick was saying.
Hmm.
And I really thought where like if you look at it, I think Jordan Spieth was not as far back from the lead as I
No.
thought he was going to be on Sunday. Like,
Well, yeah, coming in, I mean, I would have told you coming in to Sunday that I guess 11 under did end up winning. I would have said maybe 12 or 13. I mean, just expecting Sungjae to go that far over par was tough. Like, and we've
Mhm.
seen 12 or 13 kind of be that number over the past couple years. And obviously, I think we previewed this to Sam Burns at 17 under twice in the 2 years he won it. Um, so I would have guessed that you needed to get to 13, but at the end of the day, Spieth ends up at 3 under, or sorry, that's after round three. Spieth ends up, where was he, at 6 under? And there were shots out there that could have gotten him another two or three to at least get him to that 8, 9 under mark to get him in contention.
and honestly, like, you'll laugh at me for saying this, but Jordan Spieth should have won this tournament. And like I think if you look at the stats, like, he's someone that, I thought I was ready. I thought he was ready. I picked him to win this week as a test just to see if he's someone that I could count on for the rest of the year. And he failed spectacularly. Um, it was almost perfect. Like, we were so close. Like, just starting the round in his first day, eagle on the first hole. Like, you could not ask for a better start. And so he hits the green in two, drains a 22 footer for eagle. Vibes are at an all-time high. He makes the turn at 5 under par, plays the back nine at 3 over par, and finishes with just a 2 under 69. Round two, sort of same result, gets off to a really hot start on the front nine, makes a careless bogey or two, finishes at 1 under. Round three is just everything was just kind of going wrong, finishes even par. And then round four, he was 3 under through five, thought, we were in the makings of maybe a low round, and then makes a bogey on the par three eighth hole, and then just has one birdie through the rest of the round, doesn't really do anything else. And I think that's where that was the most frustrating part, is that everything was there. Like, there were parts of the game that were absolutely clicking. It's just you could not get them to click all at once. And so I think just looking at the strokes gained for the week, like, just it makes me want to bash my head into a wall. Because I think on where is it? I want to highlight round two and round four specifically. So round two, he gains 4.5 strokes putting, third in the field. His approach was losing negative, so he lost 1.6 strokes for 115th in the field. So when the putter was hot, the approach play was not. Round four, he leads the field in strokes gained approach with 4 strokes, and then loses almost a stroke putting. So every time one facet of the game was on, another just completely crapped out. And so this was a tournament that, quite frankly, the course fit was really well for him. The talent was there at times. This tournament was there for the taking for him, I fear, but it was just a compound of just silly little mental mistakes that just kept him back. And so I don't know. This was my test to see whether I could trust him for the rest of the year, and I still think I'm in the prove me wrong, like, show me more aspect of him, which is sad.
So if you had to pick one between it being encouraging and discouraging, you'd lean discouraging.
I mean, look, I'm looking at this with my tinted glasses as I always do, but the talent was there. So, like, there's no disputing that the talent was there at times, but it was just the little mistakes that were there. And I think I'd rather have the talent be there and fizzle than it not be there at all. So I think it was encouraging just to see, and this is where you're really gonna laugh. Every Masters winner in the last 10 years was ranked within the top 29 in data golf rankings, and Mr. Spieth is number 29. Just saying.
Oh boy.
That
But
sounds like a perfectly shoehorned stat to get him in
exactly,
Yeah, the
there.
top
perfectly reasonable,
29.
perfectly logical. But I don't know. I think I still believe a win is in the cards this year. I still think that maybe he could play his way onto the President's Cup. I feel like those are the criteria that I outlined at the beginning of the year. I still believe that is feasible, but you're gonna have to give me some convincing that the Masters is in play. You're gonna have to give me some convincing that maybe he can complete the Grand Slam this year. Like, I'm gonna need to see a bit more in order to, like, fully get on the Spieth wagon this year.
Yeah, I think I'd also agree, just to add on to what you were saying, Nick, that I would probably lean towards encouraging here. I think like what was interesting to me is you like you mentioned there was a lot of small mistakes, but he kind of held back on the big mistakes. Like I think obviously he had a double bogey in round one, kind of evened out that really cool eagle that he opened his tournament with. But rounds 2 through 4, he had bogeys and birdies, but no eagles, no double bogeys. So keeping the huge numbers off the card, I think is something we've come to expect from Spieth, is that he might have that six or double bogey here and there. But he played pretty clean. I mean, on Thursday he played the snake pit in 3 over, and that really set him back and kind of ruined what was, like you laid out, Nick, a great round. But broadly, like I think that was an encouraging sign for me. And it's not the best thing in the world to have only be making bogeys be an encouraging sign, but to keep those big numbers off the scorecard. And I think a lot of that was kind of like what you said, where he had one facet of the game working really well and one facet of the game working poorly every day. So it was kind of, he didn't have those huge mistakes, but he also just couldn't keep it perfectly clean. So if he can kind of piece it together, you never know. Anything can happen. Anything can happen any week. Obviously, there's some fun tournaments coming up that he's got good experiences at. Obviously, the Valero, the Masters. So lots to look forward to coming up for Spieth. But I do want to somebody that's flown very under the radar, I feel like, this year, and we haven't seen much of it all, is Patrick Cantlay. And he's kind of just been. I kind of forgot he existed, to be honest with you. Like I sort of knew he was there, but he's been very, very unremarkable this year. I think he's got like what 215. This is his first top 10 finish this week. What did he finish, like T7 or T8? But he let me double check, T7, yeah. And then prior to this, he had a T14 at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro Am, which was like a backdoor eight, like 7 or 8 under final round Sunday, top 15 finished, and then T13 at the Amex, and he just really hasn't had it. I mean, he's been erratic. He's like I said, I don't know. He just has been out of sight, out of mind for me. I'm curious to see, like, hear if, like, I don't really know what to expect from him this year. I know he wasn't great last year, but like even last year, he was a guy you could kind of expect to be around here and there. And then obviously 2024 and 2023 were years where he was kind of one of those guys who, before Xander won his 2 majors, you kind of group the two of them together. Like, man, like these guys have to start knocking out some of these majors if they're gonna these are the best golfers in the world without major championships. And now I'm kind of just like, I don't even remember that he's playing until I see his name pop up in the top 10 on Sunday at the Valspar Championship, which is not what I've grown to expect from Patrick Cantlay. So I'm curious to hear what you guys kind of think of his year so far, or like where are your expectations at with Patrick Cantlay? Are we kind of ready to, not close the book and move on, but like be like, this is what until proven otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of let him be a middle ground PGA Tour professional.
I mean, I think you said it perfectly. Like I didn't even know he finished at the top 10 until you said it. Like, and
Yeah.
my first reaction was just like, "Oh, nice." Like good for him. Like not not what you not something saying like, yes, Patrick Henley, like obviously he's going to finish in the top 10. Like I don't really expect that. I don't really, he's been kind of quiet. And like you said, he's kind of faded into a point where he's not really on our radars. And I think, if you put him in a position, like obviously he has that experience, the FedEx Cup champion. He's someone who sort of has, the Patty Ice pedigree of someone that is going to close out a tournament. But unfortunately, we haven't seen that in quite a while. And now to the point where you see him on a leaderboard, it's not surprising because you know who he is and he's someone that you'd expect to be on there, but it is almost unexpected seeing him up there these days.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
kind of
I
like,
mean,
honestly,
he's
I
also
I
just
like see him there and I'm like, man, did he just come back from injury? Why haven't I thought about it like
yeah,
in a
Right.
year?
he's also just not like a super well liked player in general,
Yeah.
just because
He
the
doesn't bring a
Yeah.
lot of
waggle, the
personality to
slow
the tour.
plays. I mean, he's a Southern California guy. Went to Servite High School actually in Anaheim, but he's just not like a big name, and just people just don't like watching him. He's just not a good watch, which doesn't help you in being talked about for sure. If people are only talking about you because they hate watching you and hate watching you do 7 waggles before you hit a shot and whatnot. Um, One other guy I wanted to bring up, who we kind of touched on the end of our preview pod, was Brooks, who played pretty well. Will, you can dive into a little bit of the stats, but I just want to go through his 4 rounds. So he shot even round one, then went 4 under in round two. So kind of after Friday, had himself in contention there. Front nine, round three was 3 under. So he climbed to 7 under for the tourney and then shot a 3 over on the back nine. And then he double, including a double bogey on 16. And then in the fourth round, 2 under on the front nine again. And then another 2 over on the back nine, including another double bogey at 16. So, I mean, he played well. He's kind of Spieth-like, where he had some stuff going for him and then just couldn't quite put it all together. But is a pretty decently encouraging 4 rounds for Brooks, especially, God, 3 under on that round three front nine, and he was right there and then just kind of fell off. What'd you think of Brooks?
Yeah, I honestly don't entirely know what to do with Brooks. Like you said, this was a really good showing, obviously up and down. Um, Finished what a T18 4 under, but that easily, like you said, could have been in contention and doing stuff on Sunday. And if you look like purely statistically, it's just like strokes gain profile. It's relatively unassuming for the tournament, but it fluctuates a lot, like round to round. Round two, he gained 4.5 shots in approach. Round three, he lost a shot in approach, but gained 2.5 in around the green play. Round four, he lost another 2 shots in around the green play. It's just like a totally like no one part of his game was carrying him through the whole tournament. It was very much round by round. But broadly with Brooks, I'm like obviously we're now in a position where we've got the Masters around the corner, right? And I'm not leaning towards Brooks, but I think that will be a really interesting test, like just to like, okay, this is where we're at with Brooks. He's playing better. Um, he's up there, kind of like his name is being mentioned on TV broadcasts, and it's not weird. Like he's like you said, that third round front nine, like he was squarely, like very firmly in contention as somebody that like, hey, if he just gets this thing into the house, then like he's going to be somebody worth mentioning on Sunday, and he could have been, but then he didn't get it into the house. So I don't know. I'm curious to like I'm kind of just keeping a wary eye on him and being like, okay, he's playing well. I'm interested to see because obviously his whole reputation is the major champ, like one of the greatest major champions, or at least major performers that I've ever seen. I mean, especially when you compare it to his average play. So but then, he did play in majors over the past few years and was not very good.
Mhm.
Um, but obviously, you have lots of other factors going into that. We've heard a lot about some of the family issues that were like at the forefront for him. Obviously, you can make what you want of live golf and how much the drive was there for him. Any of that stuff. Obviously, we saw in full swing in the first season of full swing him kind of diagnose where he thought his game was, and it was a sad a sad thing to hear. He was felt like he pretty much had nothing left to give, which is part of why he left. But now that he's back on the PGA Tour and seems to be competing at the degree he was competing at least with the energy he used to compete with, the results haven't quite come. But I am curious to see how he now performs at majors now that he's reestablished himself as somebody that is on the PGA Tour and is going to go to the Valspar and compete and trying to battle his way back into real contention. So I'm kind of just I'm watching with like one eye on him and being like I'm curious to see at the Masters he's had good experience. Obviously hasn't won it. And I don't expect him to win it this year, but if he can show up and be moderately competitive at the Masters and make the cut, have that drive, be a name that's around on Saturday and Sunday, even inside the top 20, not necessarily somebody battling for the win. I'll be very, very encouraged at that point. But for now, I'm kind of just like, okay, awesome, good, glad that he's here. Glad that he's here. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's the same sort of test like for the majors, like how we mentioned that the players was obviously not a major, but a big test for him just to see, okay, everybody's gonna be here, everybody's this is a big tournament. How is he going to fare here versus let's say Cognizant? And I'd say he passed the test. Obviously, did not another solid result this week. Probably could have been better. I think it was just like the little compounded mistakes that were really getting at him, like we mentioned. But I think, the one thought that I had was that, I feel like when he left the PGA Tour, he was obviously not at the top of his game. He was very much struggling, but he was not too far removed from those really good results as well. Like obviously he won at the WM, like he was someone that, was obviously in conversation at these majors. He was not too far removed from that. And but then you also got to remember that, when he was dominating and winning majors, like that was over 5 years ago at this point, at least. And so then he goes to live and then he wins a major like almost immediately after going to live. And we're thinking, oh, he's still here. He's still that major winner. He's still got that fire. And then, he just kind of fades into the obscurity of live over the next few years, and we don't really see him. And so I feel like now the version we think, oh, Brooks Koepka's coming back, the major winner, the dog, but that's not who he is, and that's not who he's been for a very long time. And I think because we missed out, because he was sort of trapped in the obscurity of live, we kind of missed the natural decline of Kepka to the point where we're almost having the expectations of a pre-live Brooks Koepka, but you just can't have those expectations for him anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure like he's not somebody that I will at all. If we were to list our top 10 guys that I think could win the Masters, Brooks is not on my list. Um, but I am really curious just to see what kind of energy he shows up to the Masters with. I think that's more of what I'm watching. Like I said, I mean, a top 20 would be a sign that things are really, really above my expectations. But I generally agree. I think you never know. I mean, God, we just saw Brant Snedeker at 45 compete for a title at the
Yeah, that's right.
Valspar. So, age is just a number. But by the way, this is another thing the way they were talking about Brant Snedeker, I thought he was like 65 years old. They're like he's coming from the grave to shoot. I'm like, he's 45. This is like his fourth start. I mean, obviously he hasn't been playing well, but this is like his fourth PGA Tour start this year.
Yeah.
He missed the cut at all of them, but it was like when they're talking about poor Brant Snedeker, it's like he's been, like out of the game for 20 years and is irrelevant. And it's
Yeah, they
just,
put the guy out to pasture already for credit. I
yeah.
mean,
And then
come
they're
on.
like, oh, he's 45. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it's the Valspar. Like, I mean, you kind of expect one of those guys to pop up, but
Yeah.
And was he
that was my
ripping driver
aside.
off the deck, off the tee?
He was,
Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
off the tee box. He was just throwing the ball down and hitting it, which is a great move.
Awesome.
That's
that's
a,
so
yeah,
awesome.
Just
yeah.
awesome.
Loved that. I do want to. We've been going on the Valspar for a while, and there were some other really interesting tournaments this week. But I do want to mention my guy JJ Spawn, who was my prove me wrong guy. Unfortunately, proved me right. I'm upset that he proved me right so emphatically. Also, he missed the cut with a 77 plus six on Thursday, even par 71 on Friday. Um, just I don't know, gross. Like it was, eight bogeys with two birdies on Thursday. I think I was looking through it and I might have gotten this wrong, but he obviously made a couple as well of short putts, but he missed six putts inside of 10 feet. A lot of them were like 5 foot putts. Missed six of them. Um, and the 2026 players that we had like last week was the only time he gained strokes putting this entire year. And obviously that's kind of what carried him to that US Open win. And we did mention ahead of the Valspar that uh, good putters tend to win this event. And he unfortunately has not been a good putter. He's been a very erratic putter. Even if you look back at his 2025 season, the US Open is like a green spike in his strokes gained putting profile. Like he's not a consistently great putter, but that's what he put together to win that US Open when he needed it. Hasn't been able to do that this year. I still like, man, I still really do hope he can put it together because that is always so much more fun when you look back at major champions, right? Like I never like, when you're 5 years removed, right, from 2025, when it's 2030 and you're trying to remember, you're doing a Sporkle quiz or whatever of like major champions over the last 10 years and you hit the 2025 US Open. I don't want to be like, oh man, like somebody random won it. Like who was that? Like they even played in the Ryder Cup that year. Like who? who won that? Like, man, like I don't want to be sitting there like that. I'd rather be like, oh yeah, like JJ Spawn, that was his US Open. Now he's like, even if he's not a great player, like that he now he's somebody that, is in consideration for Ryder Cup teams, is in the top 30 of the FedEx Cup come the end of the year, and is in that, in the championship every year. But like his game right now is not looking like that's the case. And I hope he can kind of sort it out and get some consistency on tour, because you never want like the prior year's US Open champion to be missing the cut by 4 shots at the Valspar. It's just so I don't know. I don't have a ton more to say. I just hope the best for him. But you never know. Maybe he'll defend his title this year. Maybe he's just going to be he's the next Brooks. Does nothing but US Open and PGA championships.
Yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
odd to me because like when I saw JJ Spawn won, I think my first thought was a bit cynical. I'm like, great, now we're gonna have to hear about this guy for the next year, like unnecessary. Like I guess my first thought was Wyndham Clark, who
Yep,
also won the US Open, was in contention for Ryder Cups, President's Cups, like he got all of this stuff courtesy of the Ryder Cup world ranking points, and then just like once the spot, like I'm not gonna say fluke win, but anytime you're in a final group with Ricky Fowler at a major, just make it the way you will. But
well, yeah, the LACC US Open might need an asterisk down the road. We
right.
might need to consider that.
Yeah.
And so, but once so like he obviously got thrust into the spotlight after winning that tournament, and then once the light came on him, like clearly was not made for the light. Like I think he ended up missing the cut at the PGA, like the very next major. And
He
so
did.
to me that was what I expected from JJ Spawn after seeing, like, I don't want to say a random winning the US Open, but he's someone that was not on anybody's radar and just kind of came up and won it out of nowhere. And unfortunately, like you almost have to be a really good player to win a major and sustain that success. And I'm not going to say I expected JJ Spawn to sort of fade into obscurity, but I'm not surprised at it either.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of just you kind of just wish he wouldn't. To Wyndham Clark's credit, I was just looking at his data golf page now. He did, the thing that was similar about his US Open win season was that he was hot coming into it. Obviously, JJ Spawn last year was second at the Players, only to Rory before winning the US Open. Wyndham Clark had won the Wells Fargo that year, won the US Open, had a third at the Tour Championship, a couple other top tens, and then he actually did win the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am in 2024 to go along with a second at the Arnold Palmer and a T2 at the Players. But 2025, 2026, obviously we saw what happened last year at his US Open last year, right? Wasn't he bashing in lockers? Wasn't
Oh my
that
God, yeah.
prior US Open at Oakmont? So obviously a lot of drama in Wyndham Clark's game, and you don't want JJ Spawn, like you said, Nick, to fade into obscurity. But unfortunately, it is whenever you get the kind of random major winner, it always is like because it's you can get first time major winners, but they're the guys that are up and coming, and you're like if Cam Young or Ludwig won like a major this year, I'd be like, oh, cool. Like, I don't think that's their last one. But when a guy like comes from absolutely nowhere to win one, you're like, man, okay, like this can go one of two ways, and they're both pretty drastic, and we'll see what happens.
Right, even like
But
Brian Harmon, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. At least, Brian Harmon, you knew his name, right? Like and I
mhm.
guess JJ Spawn, to his credit, you did too, but you didn't before the Players. You almost certainly did not
Right, exactly.
have JJ Spawn on your radar before the Players. Whereas Brian Harmon, he's kind of been around. He's a guy, whether he was a guy anybody thought was going to win that Open Championship. No, but there's a lot of and to JJ Spawn's credit, look, he got hot and he won a US Open. It's a hell of a lot more than I'll ever do in the sport. So good for him. I just
Exactly.
hope he can, kind of sustain it and find out and refine his game and kind of, become somebody that's in the conversation of maybe becoming a multi-time major champion.
It's a
For sure.
great way to put it. We can compare these guys to doing a hell of a lot more than you'll ever do on the PGA Tour. In JJ Spawn's defense for this week, all the talk about Copperhead and the Snake Pit and how great and tough of a course this is, and who knows, maybe this will be the sixth major one of these days. You never know. Maybe we could have that
I will
conversation.
say a 67 being the lowest score on a weekend at at a PGA Tour event is wild. Like
Yeah.
that is a 4 under 67 is like, man, that's I maybe I'll try to call on my guy Justin Ray on Twitter and see if he can pull that one out. Maybe that's not as rare as I think it is, but that feels quite rare. Obviously, US Opens aside, I'm sure that's happened, but even there, I mean, you always seem to get a guy that's 5 or 6 under. But
Yeah, definitely.
anyways,
I mean, I'm just
Okay.
saying, you're talking about stuff that we'll never accomplish in the world of golf. Like, did you not see I shot a 67 at Innisbrook on a simulator with handicap strokes? I don't know all about
yeah, an 81, 67. Hey, 67,
Yeah,
67. Nobody needs to know.
exactly.
that's great. All right. Let's move on to Live South Africa, where Bryson had an emotional win in a playoff over John Rahm. Will, what'd you take from this? I guess an exciting finish, a good win for Bryson. Weirdly
Yeah.
emotional after. Don't want to
Yeah, I think
speculate on that, but
no, of course not. I think there was a lot to take from this, but honestly, a lot that I took from it was not the golf itself. I mean, Bryson played well. I think if you watch, in the playoff, the shot he hit on that par five to get on the green and have like a 20-foot eagle putt was pretty outrageous. It was like I don't know what fairway wood it was, but it was a fairway wood off a downslope when everything's wet, ball below his feet, out of the rough, and somehow managed to fly to the right spot and you know get himself a 20-foot eagle putt that he didn't end up needing to make. He made birdie on that playoff hole to beat John Rahm. But the thing I want to really harp on here is like this is we've talked about this a couple times, but man, like what a good example this is of how important it is to bring golf to places that love golf. It like
Mhm.
outside of the United States, outside of Canada, outside of the places that the PGA Tour goes. We saw it at Adelaide, right? We saw it again this week at the South Africa, and we saw it, on the DP World Tour too, like going to the Joburg Open in South Africa last week, and just like all the places that live golf and obviously the DP World Tour go. Um, man, that's like I know I'm asking a lot of Brian Rolap, who has already worked miracles on my life over the past few months. But man, if we could find a way to globalize the PGA Tour just a little bit, to bring some exposure to places like Australia, bring some exposure to places like South Africa, especially considering the great golfers that have come from South Africa, that have come from Australia. Obviously, you have like so many major winners. Ernie Els is a name that comes to mind, is like a South African legend that like these countries that produce some of the best PGA Tour players aren't, honored, or honored is the wrong word, but aren't receiving the return on investment that they ought to. Um, and part of that is, like you see, we talked about this with the LPGA too, like the LPGA's Asian swing, and it's a chicken or the egg situation, but how so much of the LPGA's population is like the Asian population on the LPGA tour gets to go play out in Asia. But the PGA Tour is so isolated to the United States and surrounding areas, obviously outside of like the Genesis Scottish Open and the Open Championship, and that's not even a PGA Tour event officially. So I don't know. That's a really long-winded way of saying, like, man, it was just awesome to see the video footage of like, coming Bryson and Rom coming up 18, the crowd like surrounding the green the way you see at the end of the Open Championship, at the end of major championships when the last guy's putting out and they really just like let the crowd flood the fairway. And I'm not pretending it was like the biggest crowd I've ever seen or anything like that, but it's just like that type of energy is so important. And in order to really help the PGA Tour's future success, I think it's pretty integral to find your way uh, into markets like that. I think it's tough. I mean, I know it's tough, and I know it's a lot easier to say like, "Hey, man, like let's put an event in South Africa," when the PGA Tour
Well,
schedule doesn't really encourage that. Guys don't want to travel to South Africa for one week, especially
Well, and
like,
and you have the TV deals where
yeah,
like you just said, you saw the video packet. You weren't watching it live.
right,
And
yeah, because
with
it's
the
tough.
time difference, you're not going to be able to put that on TV. NBC is not going to buy the rights to a tournament in South Africa that they're not going to be
Yeah,
able to get a huge rating for. And that has to play
yeah.
a big factor in it, I would
No, I
imagine.
mean, yeah, I mean, the money drives everything, right? Like we know that, and I understand that too. I mean, you can't have this product without money. If it's not going to make money, there's no real good argument to doing it. But it would be if they could figure out a way to do it. That would be really really great. Maybe a FedEx Fall event. Maybe there's an international an international series or whatever for 3 weeks where they figure out a way to hop the timing properly so the time zones aren't crazy. Even if it's not necessarily the biggest names in golf. I mean, obviously you see guys like Rory McIlroy out on the DP World Tour, Tommy Fleetwood as well to start the season off. But if you could get a couple guys or even really just like man, PGA Tour events, like stuff out there, it can be FedEx Cup fall type events, like give me the Bay Current Classic in Adelaide or something. But I'd say, yeah, it was just really cool to see. And if there is a theoretical way to make that a PGA Tour or to bring the PGA Tour to those places, I'd love to see that happen one day. Obviously, very complicated, but in theory.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, I've been a very vocal person about Live over the last few months, but at the same time, I was very happy watching that. And, Bryson is someone that I've come to very much respect over the years. For whatever reason, his win at Winged Foot has been all over my social media over the last few weeks, and you forget how just buff he was. Like that
Yeah,
Oh
dude
yeah.
was massive. But just seeing like he's always been someone that's greatly intrigued me, and just seeing him win back-to-back events. Obviously you mentioned that it's a difficult time for him personally right now. Would not elaborate on what that meant, but overall, just it's really great to see him have that sort of special win, back-to-back wins, with the Masters coming right up. He's someone that honestly, it would not be foolish to put your trust in him after sort of collapsing at last year's Masters. He's someone that, very few people are playing better than Bryson DeChambeau right now, and I think he's definitely someone that you want to keep an eye on.
I was gonna say, where would you put him if you had to pick? I know the guys at No Laying Up did an exercise very similar to this, so I'll try not to steal it too directly. But just in terms of who you think could win the like how many guys before Bryson do you think could win the Masters? Like obviously there's like I still would put Scotty up there. I think just based on history, based on the fact that he's, unfortunately still the best PGA, like best golfer in the world. And at any given week, you'd expect him to find it again, especially at the Masters. But how many other golfers are you really like just especially in this exact moment? Like you said, that was the last live tournament before the Masters. So he is doing nothing but Masters prep for the next 3 weeks. I'm sure he's, whatever off the course things have made this win so significant. Like I'm sure he's dealing with those as well. But purely in terms of golf, he's not golfing again officially until the Masters tournament. So like for me, there's maybe like two or three guys that I have more confidence in than Bryson going into this event. I mean, and that's not even like me thinking directly of names other than Scotty, but just trying to piece together where Bryson would fall on my personal odds leaderboard or whatever. Like it's got to be top five.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
really like I don't even have I personally would pick him over Scotty at this point right now.
Yeah, I
And
think yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just think in terms of actual like if you were to put percentage chances, it's probably higher that Scotty wins, but he hasn't proven that, so who knows?
I'd say top three for me.
it's gotten to the point where you'd be surprised if he wasn't in contention, honestly.
Right.
Like you expect him to compete for that, no doubt. What do you guys think about Rom? He's been playing decently well too.
Yeah,
Yeah, two
definitely.
consecutive top fives on live. Like he's there's I think there's an like the way I think about it is Rom is up there, but he's in a much bigger group of PGA Tour golfers, right? Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's a lot
Yes.
of other names that I'd put in that area. Like Bryson to me is separated and put himself in an upper class. Then
Hmm.
you kind of have a little drop. Like obviously like Scotty's up there, Bryson's up there, whatever. Maybe one or two other guys are up there. Um, but I'd put, I'm trying to think, a couple guys like my beloved Cam Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, Akshay kind of fall into the John Rahm camp right now. And maybe that's not fair because those guys haven't proven it to the extent that John Rahm has proven it. But I also just haven't watched much John Rahm recently. I know he's finished well, but like, how am I going to weight a top five on Live Golf compared to a top 15 on the PGA
Hmm.
Tour at a signature event at the Players? Um, so I think he's up there. He'd probably be in my top 12 to 15 of guys I could see winning it, but that fifth to 15 range is a lot more crowded than that top five range that I think Bryson finds himself in.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And I think interesting thing about Rom that I saw is that I think he withdrew his appeal against the DP World
Oh,
Tour
really?
sanctions. So I don't know. I don't know what that does to his Ryder Cup eligibility. From what I gathered from the situation, and this was just kind of like a bit of a brief just glance at it. I think he's withdrawing his appeal, but is still refusing to pay any future fines. So
All
just a
right.
whole lot of nothing, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know if that does anything for his Ryder Cup eligibility. I don't know. Obviously, Luke Donald is going to have a bit of a decision there in terms of whether or not he wants to pick him. But yeah, I don't know. It's best you don't get me down the John Rahm train.
Yeah, well, that was a cool tournament. Cool to see. Hopefully, all is well with Bryson, and looking forward to seeing both of them compete coming up in a major. Okay, DP World Tour was in China. Jordan Gumberg's second DP World Tour win. Will, what you got from this one?
Not a ton. Like you said, Hainan Classic out in China for the DP World Tour. Really good start for Jordan Gumberg, 64, 66 on Thursday, Friday, 69, 70 over the weekend. This tournament was very much a Jordan Gumberg versus Jorge Campillo the entire time. I don't have, a ton to harp on here, but um, Gumberg has four missed cuts. It's just not a great 2026 so far. This is by far his best performance. But yeah, Gumberg versus Campillo. I mean, they were solo first and second following round one, and nobody else was either first or second for the entirety of the rest of the tournament. At one point, I think following round three, they were T1, they were tied for first with somebody else third, but nobody entered the fray really. It was kind of a good 1v1 with a couple guys, one or two shots back of them. In the end of the day, Gumberg eked it out, 19 under, good win for him. Like you said, first win since 2024 SDC, and he's one of those guys that you don't really hear his name much, and the fact that he's able to knock out a win in 2024, knock out a win in 2026, trying to get himself up and keep his ability to keep status on these tours, on the DP World Tour and stuff, is impressive and good for him. I think it's a underreported story. The guys that kind of sneak by with their tour cards and manage to knock out these wins when it's necessary, before they lose status in certain places. So good win for him. I obviously, it being in China, it's not something we get the opportunity to watch live, particularly. Um, but yeah, that's kind of it. Good for Jordan Gumberg. Happy for him. Good performance.
Yeah. And then LPGA Tour was at the Fortinet Founders Championship, not the Fortnite Founders Championship.
Could
Fortinet
have been though.
in Menlo Park. Hyoju Kim held off Nelly Korda, who made an absolute barn-burning push to catch her, and then had a couple tough missed putts. What about that one?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, Hyoju Kim wins at 16 under. Nelly Korda won back at 15 after a final round 69, where she played a lot better than a final round 69. It's totally true. It was a barn burner, and then the barn burned down, and Nelly Korda didn't know what to do anymore. It's like she totally stormed back. I'll give credit to No Laying Up one more time. They have a much more in-depth and much more detailed breakdown of both this and something else I want to talk about of the LPGA Tour. So would recommend you go listen to them for more detail. But it was Hyoju Kim who carried a pretty strong lead into the final round. I believe it was a 5-shot lead going into the final round over Nelly Korda, and held on to it, through some luck. Luck's maybe the wrong word, but on 16, she went over the green, chipped back down, it bounced off the flagstick on a shot that would have ran way by, made the par putt. And then on 17, Nelly Korda just missed a 2-footer, maybe 2.5, 3 feet, um, to not tie it up, on that at that point. But it's one of the bigger events on the LPGA tour, and it's obviously a great example. Again, No Laying Up did a much better, much more detailed breakdown of this, but it was a really fantastic example of the new broadcasting deals and broadcasting abilities that the LPGA Tour has. I mean, it was like the drone shots. There's much. They actually do a better job than the PGA Tour of introducing personality. At least they are right now. You're getting a lot more caddy conversations, a lot more random details about players that you wouldn't otherwise get. So kudos to the LPGA for them. I know Nick, you shouted out again, no laying up, and the conversation they had with the president of the LPGA, was it last week, I believe, and that was another great example of how both he and Brian Rolap, the CEO of the PGA Tour, are really just trying to listen to people to figure out what to do best and figure out what's best for their tours. And there's a lot of questions up in the air about the LPGA Tour, but it was great to see, the broadcasting abilities that the tour now has at one of their bigger events, the Fortinet Founders Championship. And like you said, Hyoju Kim walks away with the win, and she is next week at the Ford Championship, I believe. She's the defending champion. So, going into that with some momentum is good for her. She jumps up to second on the race to CME Globe behind only Nelly Korda. So
Yeah, good times
that's
for the
all I got.
LPGA. They're definitely on the rise. Hopefully, we can just see them continue to keep that momentum. And obviously that broadcasting deal is just going to be so good for them.
Yeah, and I will say again to credit Hyoju Kim, great start to her year. I think she's 2026. She's got a third place at the Honda LPGA, Thailand, a T21 at the HSBC Women's World Championship, and now a win, and now going into a place where she's obviously very comfortable. So we could be looking at a really big jump for Hyoju Kim this year. Obviously, we've known she's good, but this could be a great opportunity for her to really vault herself up the race to CME. I think Gino Titakun was right behind her, or right behind Nelly. Sorry, this at this event. I think she finished third or T3. So Hyoju Kim is up there competing with the best of the best right now. So good to see her keep doing that and maybe defend that title next week.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, along the lines of the LPGA broadcast deals, we might talk about this a little bit on Wednesday, the Chasing Sunday. So we can just touch on that, but we'll talk about that a little more in depth on Wednesday. Will, do you want to give a quick little major update following this weekend's action?
Yeah, sure. Kind of similar to last week. Honestly, there's not a ton to talk about, so this will be very brief. Obviously, what we mostly talk about is the wins across the tours. Matt Fitzpatrick's already in anything with his major championship at the Country Club in Brookline in Massachusetts at the U.S. Open. So he's already in all the majors. And for the second week in a row, Bryson DeChambeau wins at Live Golf South Africa. And once again, Elvis Smiley was high enough on the leaderboard and is third in the Live Golf individual standings. And the current exemption for the U.S. Open and the Open Championship would go to him. Obviously, the timeline on those is still a ways away. So, worth monitoring, but nothing crazy. In terms of OWGR, and we mentioned, the wins on the DP World Tour, unfortunately, for Jordan Gumberg, it's not enough to really vault him into significant position in OWGR, enough to get him towards the top 50 bubble for the Masters, top 60 bubble for the US Open. But Sam Stevens is currently on the bubble, but ironically, he was also on the bubble at the end of the 2025 season, so he's already in the Masters. So guys inside the bubble to kind of keep an eye on are Jake Knapp, who obviously we love here at Center Cup, one of the cooler guys on tour, I think, and did not play the Valspar, held steady at 42nd on OWGR. Nikolai Højgaard also held steady at 47th. One of my favorites, the Cinderella choice that I made for the 2026 season. So he's kind of just inside that bubble, and if he makes it into the Masters, look out. That's all I'm saying. But outside the bubble, Pearson Coody moves up to 51st after T55 of the Valspar. Michael Thorbjornsen moves back again after a really strong start to the season. He's now not inside the top 50 for the Masters. And Ricky Fowler drops back to 59th after that questionable decision not to play the Valspar. He is in the field next week at the Texas Children's Houston Open. So hopefully he can kind of vault himself up into position. Obviously, only 2 more weeks to get yourself there, to get inside that top 50. So he needs to finish soon.
I
Doesn't
think
have that much opportunity.
Yeah, I think Ricky Fowler Tracker, one of the best Twitter accounts,
Love
said,
it.
I think he needs a top 5 at Valspar, or he needs to win the Valero if he wants to qualify for the
Ooh.
Masters. So,
Yikes. Yeah, it's going to take
yeah,
a lot.
could be tough.
I don't
Um,
know why he skipped Valspar, but
yeah,
whatever.
that doesn't make much sense, but okay. Well, all right. So we will be back on Wednesday previewing the Texas Children's Houston Open. And then, of course, we'll be back following Monday and Wednesday, recapping everything. Valero's coming up next, and then we got the Masters coming up quicker than you expect. So this is it right here. This is the time. It's heating up.
Hmm.
So we will on Wednesday. We'll come back. We'll have some more stuff to discuss. Like I said, we'll talk a little Chasing Sunday. We might give a little fantasy golf update. We'll give our picks, all that good stuff. Look out for our stuff on Twitter at Center Cut Pod. I know Nick and Will both were posting some stuff today, regards to some clips we've had. We're gonna keep on churning out some social media stuff and do even more of that. Our Instagram and TikTok at centercup.pod. And you can always email us at centercup.pod@yahoo.com. Any final words, boys?
No, be coming at you from Sarasota, Florida, when we record our next pod. So if I look really tan, just that's why.
Yeah,
As
we'd like
a
to.
redhead, I obviously tan quite a bit. So
Maybe we need Will to do one of the pods from one of the bunkers he'll be living in while he's playing
oh
over
yeah,
there.
I'll be on the beach a lot, both on and off the golf course. So it'll be great.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening as always, and we will catch you on Wednesday.